Now let me ask you this. What happens when a shop assistant mistakes a woman for just another customer? What if that woman is the one holding the future of the store in her hands? Stay tuned to find out how one small mistake changes everything, and trust me, you won't want to miss the twist at the end. Keep watching. Before we dive into today's story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing stories. It was a crisp morning at Madre, one of the most luxurious boutiques in the city. Soft jazz music played in the background, blending perfectly with the quiet hum of high-end clientele browsing through the carefully curated displays. The air smelled of expensive perfume and freshly pressed linens. At the center of it all was Lana, a shop assistant who had been working at Madre for 5 years. Her sharp attention to detail had made her indispensable to the store, earning her a reputation as someone who was always in control. Lana prided herself on her no-nonsense attitude toward customers. She was always polite but never overly friendly. In her mind, the boutique was a place for people who understood luxury, not for people who were there to waste time. She had seen every type of customer, from the discerning regulars to the occasional looky-loo, and she knew how to spot the difference. Behind the polished glass counter, Lana adjusted the tags on a few items, glancing up every so often to keep a watchful eye on the store. She noticed a few customers trying on clothes and a man admiring a leather handbag. Everything was running smoothly, just the way she liked it. Then the door chimed, signaling the arrival of another customer. Lana's gaze shifted, and her eyes quickly locked on to the woman who had just entered the store. The woman was tall, with an air of grace that immediately caught Lana's attention. She was dressed in a modest yet elegant outfit, nothing too flashy or ostentatious, but there was a quiet sophistication to her appearance. Her short, silver hair framed her face with such poise that it felt as though it belonged to someone who commanded respect without needing to say a word. Lana's initial reaction was quick: another regular customer. Her eyes narrowed as she assessed the woman's attire. She doesn't look like she can afford the kind of things we sell here. It was the kind of assumption that Lana had made countless times before, judging someone based on how they looked, how they carried themselves. She dismissed the thought quickly and returned to her task. There was no need to dwell on it. It was just another day at Madre. However, what Lana didn't know was that this woman, this seemingly unassuming customer, was about to turn her world upside down. Meryl Streep had heard about Madre from a colleague, an offhand recommendation that piqued her curiosity. The boutique was known for its refined taste, a place where discerning individuals came to find something truly special. She was in the mood to buy a gift for a dear friend, someone who appreciated quality over status. The idea of wandering through the racks, enjoying the tranquility of a place that catered to such high-end tastes, felt like the perfect escape from her otherwise busy schedule. Meryl meandered through the boutique, fingers grazing over soft fabrics, picking up a few items to inspect, feeling their weight, imagining how they would look on her friend. She wasn't in a rush. She didn't need help. This was a rare moment of peace for her, and she planned to savor it. Meanwhile, Lana had already spotted her. From her position behind the counter, Lana kept a watchful eye over the store floor. The woman browsing near the scarves was striking, but there was something about her that didn't sit right with Lana. She looked at the way the woman handled the items. No hurried glances or tentative fingers, just a calm assurance that told Lana this wasn't the typical customer who walked in to make a quick purchase. When Meryl picked up a designer scarf and draped it casually over her arm, Lana's suspicions only deepened. She's probably just looking for something to pass the time, Lana thought. Most of our customers know exactly what they want. No one just browses here. Lana took a slow, deliberate step forward, her sharp eyes studying Meryl. She had seen it all before. Customers who thought they could wander around without making a decision, taking up valuable space and attention from those who were serious about buying. She wasn't about to let that slide. "Can I help you find something today?" Lana asked, her tone polite, but with a hint of suspicion. It was the same approach she used when dealing with any customer she considered out of place. Her voice was smooth, but it carried the edge of professionalism that hinted she had no patience for idle browsing. Meryl looked up at her, meeting her gaze with a warmth that was instantly disarming. She smiled, her face lighting up in the way only someone accustomed to the spotlight could manage. "No, I'm just browsing." "Thank you," Meryl replied, her voice calm and composed. Lana studied her closely, feeling a growing sense of discomfort. She doesn't look like she belongs here, Lana thought again. Meryl wasn't dressed like most of the store's usual clientele, who always wore items with visible brand logos, expensive accessories and designer labels. Meryl's outfit was understated, simple yet elegant. There was an air of normalcy about her, something that seemed out of place in a place like Madre. It was as though she was trying too hard to look like she wasn't trying at all. For a brief moment, Lana's doubts crept in. Maybe I'm reading this wrong. But the feeling lingered, something wasn't right. Without another word, Lana stepped back, her eyes never leaving Meryl as she mentally catalogued the details. Just browsing? Maybe she'll buy something, maybe not. Either way, she's not our usual customer. Minutes passed and Meryl continued her leisurely browse, picking up a few items here and there. She inspected each piece with care, examining the feel of the fabrics, imagining how they might look on her friend. She wasn't in any hurry, but she wasn't dawdling either. The atmosphere of Madre was calming, and it allowed her to take her time without the pressure of a fast-paced world pushing her forward. But Lana had been watching. The store had been fairly quiet, and it was rare for customers to linger for so long without making a purchase, especially in such a high-end boutique. Lana's patience was wearing thin. She couldn't help but wonder why Meryl hadn't picked out anything yet. Her routine was built on efficiency, and in a store like Madre, lingering without a purpose wasn't something Lana had any tolerance for. After all, the boutique had a reputation to uphold and not everyone belonged here. Finally, the moment of reckoning arrived. Lana couldn't contain her frustration any longer. With her jaw set and her posture rigid, she approached Meryl once again. This time, her tone wasn't as polished as before, there was an unmistakable bite to her words. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "If you're not planning on making a purchase, I'll have to ask you to leave. We don't allow loitering." Meryl, who had been holding a scarf up to her face to admire the fabric, lowered it slowly. She looked up at Lana, her warm smile faltering ever so slightly. The words had taken her off guard, but she didn't let it show. There was a brief moment of silence between them, a charged, almost electric stillness that filled the air. Meryl's gaze softened, but her posture was firm. "I'm sorry?" she asked, her tone calm, but there was an edge of confusion there. Lana wasn't backing down. "You heard me," she said, her voice sharper now, colder. "This is a high-end boutique. We don't have time for people who don't plan to buy anything." She gave Meryl a long, assessing look, the implication clear. "If you're not here to shop, then you don't belong here." Meryl stood still for a moment, absorbing the words. She could feel the weight of Lana's judgment in the air, like a heavy pressure pushing down on her. But as much as the words stung, her expression remained unshaken, calm, composed. There was a flicker of disbelief in her eyes, as if she were trying to process what had just been said. Who did this woman think she was? Meryl couldn't help but wonder. But she was no stranger to moments like this. Moments when assumptions were made based on appearances, and the arrogance of others tried to put her in a box. Still, she stood her ground, the silence between them growing longer. She could have easily walked away, but something about the situation made her hesitate. Meryl's expression remained serene, her features almost angelic in their calmness. But there was a subtle shift in her demeanor as she straightened up, her posture exuding quiet authority. She could feel the tension in the air, and for a moment she allowed herself the space to absorb it. Then, with an almost imperceptible sigh, she spoke again, this time the edge in her voice unmistakable. "You seem to have misunderstood, dear," she said, her tone now slightly sharper but still composed. "I'm not just another customer. I'm the director of your upcoming ad campaign." The words hung in the air like a slap to the face, and Lana's face went pale. Her eyes widened, and she took a small step back, instinctively trying to process what Meryl had just said. "What?" Lana stammered, her mind racing to catch up with the reality of the situation. The words didn't seem to match the woman standing before her, the woman who had been calmly examining scarves just moments before. How could she have known? How could she have missed something so important? Meryl's calm voice cut through the moment of confusion, carrying an undeniable weight. "I'm overseeing your store's marketing for the next quarter. I've been in and out of meetings about this store for weeks." She paused for a beat, her gaze steady and unwavering as she looked directly into Lana's eyes. "I'm the one who's going to make sure your boutique's image is polished, or tarnished, depending on how things go from here." The reality of her words settled in, and it was as though the air had been sucked out of the room. Lana stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, but no sound escaped. The realization hit her with the force of a ton of bricks. The woman she had just rudely asked to leave wasn't just some regular shopper. She wasn't someone who wandered in without a care, oblivious to the store's prestige. No, this woman was someone with power, someone whose influence could make or break the store's reputation. She had just dismissed a person who held the fate of Madre in her hands. Someone who could elevate the store or bring it crashing down with a single comment. The weight of her mistake crushed Lana in that instant. Her skin flushed with embarrassment, and she felt the urge to shrink into the ground, wishing for the earth to swallow her whole. But there was no escape. She had made a catastrophic error. The woman who had been standing before her, seemingly just another customer, was a director, a person with the kind of sway that could ruin her career with a single phone call. The silence between them stretched on, and Lana's heart raced in her chest. What was she supposed to say now? How could she apologize for something so monumental, for an error so massive that it could cost her everything? Lana's face turned bright red. The blood rushed to her cheeks as the weight of her mistake finally hit her. Her hands shook slightly and she found herself struggling to find the right words, but nothing seemed adequate. The magnitude of the situation made her feel small, insignificant. How had she not known? How had she been so blind? I'm so sorry, Lana stammered, her voice trembling with embarrassment. I didn't realize. Before she could say more, Meryl raised a hand, gently cutting her off. Her expression was calm, almost serene, but there was a depth in her eyes that suggested she understood exactly what had just happened. It's okay, Meryl said softly. I understand. I'm used to it. Lana felt a flicker of relief, but Meryl's next words hit like a punch to the gut. But it's disappointing. The one thing you should always do is treat people with respect, no matter how they appear. Lana stood frozen, her mouth dry. Respect. It was so simple, so basic, yet she had failed to show it when it mattered most. The realization settled heavily in her chest, making it harder to breathe. She had just insulted someone who could make or break her. No, not just that. She had insulted someone who, like everyone else, deserved common courtesy and kindness. A lump formed in Lana's throat, and she felt like she might choke on the words she was about to say. She had just made a terrible mistake. A woman of Meryl's caliber wasn't one to easily forgive, and Lana knew, she knew, that this could ruin her reputation, her job, her standing at Madre, everything she had worked so hard to achieve. I didn't mean any harm, Lana whispered, her voice barely audible. I was just trying to do my job. The words came out in a weak attempt to explain herself, but even as they left her lips, she knew they sounded hollow. She could have done her job without the judgment, without the assumption, without the harshness. Meryl didn't immediately respond, but she gave a small, understanding nod. Her expression softened just a touch, the tightness in her features giving way to a more measured calm. I know you were, she said. But sometimes we forget that everyone matters. Even those who don't fit our idea of who belongs where. Lana swallowed hard. It was as though the truth of Meryl's words had pierced through the armor of her pride, leaving her exposed. It was the truth, one she had been blind to for far too long. Everyone matters. Not just the ones who look the part, not just the ones who fit a mold, but everyone. People could surprise you, and judgment should never come before respect. The words resonated deeply with her, and she felt a rush of embarrassment flood over her. But then, amidst the shame, something else stirred, a sense of realization. Lana wasn't sure what to call it, but it was clear to her that she had learned something invaluable today. Something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. She had assumed, and in doing so, she had almost destroyed her career, her reputation, and her own sense of dignity. But this was a lesson she wouldn't forget. And while she couldn't undo the damage she'd caused, she knew that from this moment on, she would do better. She would never judge someone by their appearance again. As Meryl turned to leave, she paused just before reaching the door. For a brief moment, she glanced back at Lana, her eyes softening as if the weight of the situation had been fully understood on both sides. She wasn't angry anymore, there was no bitterness in her gaze, just something else. Something that made Lana hold her breath, waiting for the next words. I think you have potential, Meryl said, her voice calm but firm. If you're ever interested in learning more about customer relations, give me a call. I can help you improve the way you approach things. Lana stood there, frozen in place. Her heart skipped a beat, the shock of Meryl's words catching her completely off guard. Potential? She didn't know whether to feel relieved or amazed. Here, after everything that had happened, Meryl was offering a lifeline. A chance for redemption, a way to grow from her mistakes instead of letting them define her. Lana wasn't sure if she was worthy of such a gesture, but it struck a deep chord inside her. The sound of Meryl's soft footsteps echoed briefly in the silence before she smiled one last time, a warm, genuine smile that felt like the kind of smile a teacher might offer to a student who had just learned a valuable lesson. Then, without another word, Meryl exited the store. The door chimed softly behind her as it closed, the sound hanging in the air like a quiet conclusion to a chapter. Lana stood alone in the now empty boutique. The reality of what had just transpired settled in, and her hands were still trembling slightly. She wasn't sure what she felt most, relief, guilt, or gratitude. The mix of emotions was overwhelming. But one thing was certain, she would never forget this encounter. Not for the rest of her life. As the hours passed and the store returned to its usual rhythm, Lana found herself reflecting on Meryl's words. She may not have had the chance to make things right with Meryl directly, but something even more profound had happened. Lana had learned something far more important than the superficial lesson of who the woman was. She had learned that appearances could be deceiving, that judging someone based on how they looked or how they acted in a single moment could cost you everything. She had learned the true meaning of respect, respect that transcended labels and expectations. Never judge a book by its cover. The words echoed in her mind, and for the first time in a long while, Lana felt as though she was seeing the world, and the people around her, in a completely different light. It was a lesson that would stay with her forever.